Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Loft. If you have not yet, please like, comment, subscribe. We're on the road to 1,000. Like I said, if you have not liked or subscribed yet, please do that. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new, thanks for tuning back in. We interrupt this episode to give a shout out to our sponsor for this episode. Been cooking since he was a kid. Nick Mcfadden went to culinary school, out of high school, was in and out of restaurants, and realized he hated working for someone else, not being able to make his own food. He decided to take a few years off from cooking, started construction and painting, and then COVID hit. Once COVID hit, it made him realize he wanted to start his own business. So as a result, he started cooking out of his parents' house on Blaze Street. When he decided to pick up and grow bigger, he moved into Celtic Cross. Once again, I want to give a huge shout out to Blaze Street Cafe for sponsoring this episode. What's your advice to someone who is lost?
The opposite of addiction is connection, and I could never do this thing on my own.
I've been working since I was a kid. I just gotta keep my head.
That you're responsible for and that your name's attached to, do you feel like that gave you that responsibility to be better than you were?
That's when it all began. I don't need a rollie on my.
If you believe in yourself a little bit, you'd be surprised what could happen.
Yeah, I got them fed up for real. Running around, but I'm the passenger now, cause Jesus don't cut them.
Our next guest is an old friend of mine and one of my former teachers. He's the current principal of Archbishop Ryan, ladies and gentlemen, Joe Mcfadden, AKA Mr. Mcfadden. What's going on?
Not much. What's going on, Kevin?
No,
Great to see you.
Thanks for coming on the pod. I'm really excited to have you on. I know it's been a little while. Last time I seen you was probably just in the hallways, coming to the games, the Ryan games here and there. If you guys don't know, he, used to be a teacher at Ryan. He's currently the principal at Ryan. You became the principal after I left, right? I graduated in 2015.
Yeah, summer 2015.
Oh, right when I left. Okay.
I think I was the assistant principal for some years while you were there.
Yeah, so we have you're good friends with Matt Dever. I know you have a huge relationship with all of them. Those are my good friends too. I also know that I think it was 2013 or 2014, that area. I know you had something happen in your life. You had a heart attack.
Yes.
And I know that you've battled through so much after that. So I really just wanted to have you on to, just talk a little bit about your story and a little bit about, some of the things you went through, because I can only imagine, how intense it must have been to suffer through something like that at your age and to bounce back from that and, become the principal of Ryan, So I really wanted to dive in on that. Sure. First off, I wanted to ask, how are you? How you doing?
Been doing well.
Good.
It's the middle of the school year, so it's always it's always a tougher part. The new semester just started.
Yeah,
but
shout out to all the students who are watching right now.
Absolutely.
So how has Ryan been since,
It's been really good, I have to say.
Yeah.
Again, it's been a little while since you've been in there. Most most schools, it's had a strange, 3-year journey recently through COVID.
Yeah, I was about to ask that. So what happened with COVID during the school year?
The winter, we were just actually talking about this at work, the winter of 2020, not unlike this winter, no snow. So we were hitting March and the kids were waiting for a snow day, and the teachers.
Yeah.
And, there was talk of this, shutdown coming, and we kept saying, we're going to get our snow day in. And it was going to be a 2-week break.
Never happened.
No, and that 2-week break turned into rest of the year. And, it was tough, really tough on those kids.
During COVID, all the kids were obviously had school from home. Did you have to, how quick was that transition to online school?
Within that first year for the class of 2020, that group, we really tried within a few days to make a transition to some form of online learning. Definitely, not perfected, trying to get the kids to complete work. It was really about trying to finish that year. And I think we kind of kept thinking maybe there was a hope of coming back. And then it kind of became about trying to find the best way for the class of 2020 to finish, which was really tough on them. That's you think of your senior year, they had a bulk of their year. They had everything really up to color games.
It's like your moment, your senior year.
No senior prom, no graduation, which is it is tough.
And sports got canceled, right?
Right.
All the seasons were
the
canceled?
whole spring season was canceled. Everything had finished by the winter because it was March.
Right.
And then that ended. And then the following year was probably even weirder. It was what was called the hybrid year. We in the Catholic schools did a lot of the public and charter. They were still closed. They were virtual for the year. But you were either an A or a B kid, and you either were in one day, and then when you were home, you had to do class online with the other class.
So you rotated kids in and out of school.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was almost the least natural feeling. I still teach a class, and I was teaching AP English that year. And I never the entire year had those 25 kids in one room.
That's insane.
Yes.
Wow. I remember my days at Ryan being in in the halls and just like not even really thinking of it, and then all of a sudden COVID hits, and like I can only imagine. I graduated Temple 2019, so I was done school by June, July, and then COVID hit, and then that following February. So I can only imagine just like I feel for those kids, man. A lot of the athletes, that's probably the worst,
Right. And not to downplay, everyone always talks about the class of 2020, and they did. They lost prom, they lost graduation, but I always thought 2021 had just like that class had no year. Thank God at the end we were able to get a senior celebration, a light prom in, and graduation.
So 2021, right? So when did things sort of get semi back to normal?
I would say the closest would probably be March of 2022. That's when the mask ban was lifted in schools, and,
right.
Without having to deal with that piece with the students, and it just felt like a much more natural piece. I mean, even you were in class. Imagine sitting with 30 kids. With
with a mask on,
right? The teachers trying to address kids. I felt like there were kids until March I didn't even know, and I always
it affects everything, because I know you've always been a great teacher when in my experience of just building a relationship with the kids. So I can only imagine just being in high school and not really having that chance.
So it was weird. Like the end of last year was really nice, and just coming back this year, it had much more of a dare I say, old school vibe. Yeah, so
I'm just curious, personal curiosity. Was there a lot of the teachers still there?
They were. I think COVID may have helped facilitate some retirements, because right now there's probably only about, from the time you were there, I'd say maybe about 5 to 5, maybe closer to 10.
Is Miss McBride still there?
Yes.
Miss McBride, if you're watching this, I love you. She was one of my favorite teachers. She taught me physics and math, and she was always my substitute teacher. She was the best.
She's still there.
She's awesome. So I wanted to dive into 2013, 2014. Sure. So I know, like I said, that was a huge part of your life, and just the way you came back from it really, it really inspired the community, because I know that once that happened, everyone kind of rallied behind you. And take me back to those days when that happened. Before that, did it just kind of come out of nowhere? Like, what happened with that?
Yeah, I would definitely say it was something that to me came out of nowhere. I mean, I wasn't really not feeling well. I mean, when it happened, I was 32. It was October 2012. I'm 32 years old, and I am.
What day in October now?
October 7th.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
I could give you that date very quickly.
Yeah, I could tell.
And everything that kind of led up before that, I mean, I was enjoying. I had a new class. That was the year I had John Cole and all those guys.
Mike, yeah.
They were juniors. I had a good class. It was the week I had just ended my shore house. Every year, even still, I get a shore house each year. I was down in Sea Isle for the summer, and I was teaching at the time, so I was done for June, July, and August, and was down for a large bit of the time. And this was really my first weekend home. And I maybe saying I wasn't feeling like myself, but nothing at all.
Nothing out of the ordinary.
Nothing out of the ordinary. So there was a Saturday, and I was home. I cut the lawn. I did things. I even had to babysit. She was very young then. My niece Kaylin, who's now a senior in high school.
Oh wow!
And
time
flies.
By.
Yeah, I was babysitting her. I'd cut the grass, and we were having dinner. We got Wendy's over at Academy Plaza. Came back and went to bed. Woke up probably about 1:30 in the morning with just a horrible pain in my chest, like somebody was sitting on my chest. I was sweating. I felt horribly nauseous, which is basically you think now every warning sign and symptom that I had. I just thought maybe something bad with nothing on Wendy's, but maybe something bad with the food that I had,
the nuggets or something.
Right, that it just didn't sit well, and I just wasn't feeling well. I got sick, was still sweating, so I go downstairs. I'm not feeling well. I had a horrible habit at the time. I picked it up when I was in high school. I'd smoked cigarettes. Okay. And so a horrible thing to think. I went outside, had a cigarette. It was probably some of the worst things I could have done. So this is about 1:30, and it's finally in the morning, and I'm still not feeling better. I call my sister. She's going to hate this. She's a nurse. I'm telling her these symptoms, and she's like, "You're just having indigestion or something." She sends me to Rite Aid to go buy Maalox. I take that. I'm taking stuff, and it's not doing it. I'm still just feeling like something is not right in my body. And talk about getting a warning sign.
Yeah. So how long was this process? How long was
We're probably at about 6 hours now. It's probably 7:30 in the morning, and I'm still not feeling well. I reach out, I go, like, Mom, I'm not well. Like, so she comes, we go to the hospital. We're in the car and I'm like, ooh, like something's not feeling right in the arm. It's all that. We go in the hospital. Thank God I go to the ER. It was Frankfurt at the time. Now I think it's Jefferson.
Yeah.
And they were great. They took me right back. They started doing stuff. And the one thing I'll never forget, the kid who was, the nurse was one of my former students who was my nurse back there. And he, I guess, is doing an EKG or something and immediately able to check, says, because his words were, Mr. Mcfadden, you're having a heart attack. And it's kind of like a fairly surreal way to hear that. Like I would have rather heard Joe, you're having a heart attack, not Mr. Mcfadden, you're having a heart attack from a former student. And they wound up doing this like STEMI alert thing that went through the hospital. And next thing I had to go up and get a stent. Without making a long story, I'd had what was called a widowmaker at 32. The heart attack could have been, it was 100% blockage in the, I think it's the LED. And that they said I only really had a few more hours, that if I had waited any longer, it would have been one of those ones where you just drop.
Wow.
So I was able to get the stent, was in the hospital for a bit of time. I had a couple of rhythm issues in there. So within 10 weeks, I had to have a defibrillator and a pacemaker installed. Wow. So I've had that in since 2012 also. But, other details to it, thank God, have been good since then. I mean, I had to make a lot of changes in my life. I obviously quit smoking. October 7th was the last day.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that was 10 years. It was 10 years this October.
Yeah.
Wow. Last October. So, to be able to mark that milestone of that 10 years since heart attack, I had to lose some weight. I had to drop about 70 pounds.
I noticed like when you kind of came back in the swing of things, I was still in school. Like, and I was like, wow, you look good. Like,
thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And it's still a battle. I'll tell you, it gets harder as you get older.
Right.
But I just think I had great doctors, and at that point, the way my family rallied behind me, I could say my work family rallied behind me. Students, like people. I always felt were in my corner. I'll still get people now. Like I have some great people that I work with who will give me the occasional reminder if they're like, I don't know if you should be eating that. Or that kind of thing, where you're like, all right, like a day is like relax.
Okay, it's been some time. Correct. So going through that, how long was that recovery process?
I was out of work for about 10 or 11 weeks. I came back right around Christmas at that time. Okay. I had a great sub. She now teaches at Archbishop Carroll, so it's pretty nice that she's still there. Yeah. And I had to make a lot of changes to my lifestyle, which was hard. How I ate, things with exercise and things that I've kind of had to maintain. The one big thing has really been the exercise. I try to maintain. I try like pretty much every morning to get out. I'd love to say run and sound cool. But it's more like a walk, jog.
Every now and then.
To do 4 miles each day, and the weekends I try to do like 4 to 6, just to. And I mean that actually helps me with the job mentally. Also, it's a great way to get out at like 5:30 a.m. and kind of clear my head.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was gonna ask too. Is that since your heart attack and since your recovery, like how has your life changed in terms of like how you take care of yourself?
I just think that there's a part I probably took care of myself in my 30s and so far in my 40s. In ways that I did not in my 20s is probably a fair way to say. I mean, down the shore for the summer.
That's what your 20s are for, though. I mean, I'm 26, so it's like I just did dry January, so like that was huge for me. My Bobby's saying too, like that was huge for me. It's tough because life kind of hits you. You know what I mean? Like things will happen. You one day you'll wake up and not feel great, and you're like, yo, something needs to change or some type of lifestyle. But I mean, I might ask you, like, so after these changes and making those changes, how has your life changed since who you were in your 20s to now who you are in your 40s? Like, it's like that happened. The heart attack happened. How has your life changed?
I think it's definitely a more reflective on what happened. It's certainly a more aware, like it's probably easy to say that in my 30s, or maybe a lot of people in their 30s or even to early 40s, you're maybe not aware or focused more on like your mortality.
Right.
That's there. I think of, what I did. I'm very appreciative, that what I have, but it kind of makes me conscious that I have to, be mindful, I guess, of some of, the choices that I'm going to make. I mean, like I said, being down the shore, enjoying the 20s, enjoying the 30s, and I still go down. Like, you know what I mean? I can't say that I'm living life like a Quaker, I had a dry-ish January, I guess I could say.
Good.
But
as long as it's in, moderation,
right.
I guess. But
it's a matter of just trying to make, it's made me aware that, like, if I had to take care of my body, or be mindful of that in relation to my heart and those other pieces, that, take the exercise. Like I
sure.
found how important that, that piece there, giving myself a clear emotional break or separation from things with work. How key that is, as simple as a night's sleep, or just finding these things that I enjoy doing,
right.
That provide me sort of that
Yeah.
break, that relaxation,
Yeah.
that I think, is key for everyone. But,
Right.
there are times I know I have to kind of separate.
Yeah, and you mentioned mortality. So when you were in the hospital room, getting looked at and being told that you had a heart attack, like, did anything kind of come into play mentally where you were like, wow, like, this could be it? Like, did you ever have that moment of mortality, or, where you were thinking about, like, did your life ever kind of flash before your eyes in that moment?
When they told me that, and they were getting ready to take me upstairs, and my sister happened to be working, she works at the ICU over at Jefferson, and she came down and was like trying to calm me. I know after the surgery there, I don't remember much of that day, that Sunday after that, because even when I came out, I was having I think I had issues with breathing and oxygen levels, so I had oxygen on.
Yeah.
I remember Father Donia from school. Coming in, and he was I remember him saying later, he was caught off guard. He got a call from school to come up and didn't necessarily realize it was that serious.
Right.
I do remember him doing the last, which is a scary thing to say.
The last
That's
rites.
it's a horrible, but the last rites, couple things with that day, but I think worse were I had about 3 days where I stayed in ICU before I was in the step down, and maybe by that second day, they were trying to get me up, or even the first day, up and walking a little bit. And without trying to sound like an ageist, but a lot of times when you walk around in ICU, there was a lot of older people who are in fairly bad shape. And then when you realize that you're there, and you're there probably for some choices that you made, you get a lot of time in that room with your thoughts. And there is a genetic piece also. My sister wound up having a heart attack 2 weeks after me.
Oh, wow.
My other brother had one a few years later, and it stems from a family piece on my mom's side. So it's
Right.
The genetic piece didn't help, but the family, the choices I made, and clearly the smoking,
Right.
definitely impacted
you
that.
kicked it in.
Yeah.
And so, what are some of the things you mentioned, like your thoughts? What are some thoughts that you had in there that, may have contributed to helping you make better life choices?
I think first there was probably some anger, and I want to say that woe is me stuff but I had to move past that. If people that had me in class, people that knew me at school, I never was truly an angry, bitter person. So I think I kind of rather quickly came about the piece in being thankful that I'm getting this chance again. And it's probably fortuitous in some way, working in a Catholic school, that on top of that, thinking to, seniors go on those Kairos retreats, and being friendly with Father Donia and our school ministers that followed, I got to go on a lot of those. And I think even that, we talk about the mental piece, talk about the physical, but also the spiritual, that all of those pieces were kind of in some sense made whole. So I think it was able, definitely to help me heal, to help me recover.
That's awesome. Do you still feel like you're healing? Do you still feel like there are things you're working on?
I do, absolutely. I still, sometimes you discover different things, ultimately about myself.
Right. What do you think? What do you think are the three biggest things that it's maybe taught you?
That one, that it's definitely temporary. That I know it sounds basic, but one, that you clearly have to take care of your body.
Yeah.
That it's multi-parts. That if all of those things are not going to be in sync, there's a spiritual piece, your physical, your social, emotional piece is not in sync. Your life is going to be out of balance.
Right.
That it's, I think that's the way to try to find that, that healing and that peace. And probably the last one is like never being afraid to rely on the people that are close to you. You know, when you have these people in your life, you know, and they're really there to support you.
Speaking of the people that are close to you, you coming back, we mentioned how much support you had. So coming back, you know, what kind of reception did you have when you walked back into school for the first time, you know, working back, you know, coming back to work? Like, what was that reception like from the students, from the teachers, everyone?
It was, I mean, it was really nice. I clearly, you know, remember going back into the faculty, especially the, you know, the department. I was up on the second floor with the English department at that time. You know, and like throughout it, like Mr. Macko and his wife had brought me all kinds of food, and his wife was doing like low cholesterol, low salt cooking and stuff for me. Ms. Zimborski handling, you know, numerous items in regards to my sub and me coming back. The constant, you know, communication just from Ms. Tchaikovsky, who was the principal at the time, Mr. Meredith, you know,
really,
I'm just saying,
you're really bringing me back here, man.
You know, I mean, I was on leave and I was, you know, I remember I was still out because I was doing yearbook with Father Donia.
Yep.
You know, just coming back, my classes, when I came back, they were so good. Like, I think they were scared to death that they were going to, like, if they did one thing and I like had to yell at them, that they were going to give me a heart attack. And they always felt bad because I went out on a Saturday. Well, I had the heart attack Sunday morning. It was a Saturday that I was sick. But I think Friday, and it's funny how they remember this because I'll see them like at the Shore reunion and they mention it. That Friday I yelled at them. And I didn't typically yell. I caught a bunch of them plagiarizing a homework.
Oh, wow.
And I, like, you know, did one of those, like, disappointed in you, yada, yada, that whole spiel. And, like, yelled at them and they felt bad. And that was Friday. And then they didn't see me again for 10 weeks. You know, I yelled at them and like, and you did that. So I think they were scared. You know, they were afraid to do anything.
What was their, what would they say when they saw you again for the first time? Were they like,
oh, they brought that thing right up.
Really?
They were like, did we do it? Yes, you did. Yes. You're cheating on sinners in the hands of an angry God is the thing that absolutely did it. I mean, and even that year I had calf duty with Chris Vitale, Mr. Vitale.
Yeah, Mr. Vitale.
You may remember. And like, calf duty, you just have to keep walking around the calf. You know, you don't want to bother people. They're eating, but you just keep an eye on things. And we wound up spending the year basically just playing this stupid version of a movie game that he would play. So you'd be like, you know, Tom Hanks was in Forrest Gump with Gary Sinise. And then you'd have like Gary Sinise was in such and such. And we would just go back and forth. And we must have played it for weeks on end. And wherever we left on Friday, that before I had my heart attack, when I came back to work on that, like Monday after Christmas break, he's like, it was Tom Hanks, was it? You know, picked right up. So he's like, we're right back.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it's like those little things you remember about the people and the incident.
Right. Who really, is there anyone specific who stepped up for you in your recovery?
I would say, you know, I had a number of friends that I'm close with. Some were at Ryan, no longer are, you know, it's the interesting name, but, you know, Mr. Panapresso was and he and I are, you know, very friendly, but at that time, you know, incredibly helpful. Jen Hannigan. Chuck, if you're watching Jen Hannigan, who was, you know, at Ryan, Sue Strange, good friends of mine. Father Donia was a great person to be able to speak to on a variety of levels also about what was going on with it. You know, and I think my family, and I got to give a shout out. I mean, to say, you know, she's not here with me anymore. My mom was just absolutely amazing. Again, it was her youngest kid, her baby, who was, you know, 32 and, you know, dealing with, you know, with a heart attack. So we would, you know, it was not the way it was supposed to be for her to be taking care of me for weeks. You know, it was supposed to be the other way.
Yeah, I actually wanted to hit on that, if you don't mind. The passing of your mother. When did that happen?
Dates, a lot of that was June 2015. It was actually it was like 2 weeks before I was appointed principal.
Okay.
She had gotten sick. Actually, I can remember. I mean, the date that they found her cancer was the Color Games finale for that class, and it was a somewhat controversial one because, like, I think the seniors didn't get the award or something.
I feel like 2015. Was it my senior year, right? 2015. I graduated in 2015.
Yeah, remember you guys weren't being awarded the plaque, and then the freshmen left and came back. I actually wasn't in the room for that because I got a sense that like something was not happening. So I was academic at the time. I had to fix the schedule, And while I was going, she called. She had an appointment, and they said they found something. I remember there was all this controversy going on about the color games.
Color games
and
were
I
intense,
couldn't
man.
have cared less about what was going on because you know
Well, yeah,
what I mean. I was
so-
dealing with that. That was February, and it was really it hit fast. It was stage 4 cancer, lung cancer to metastasize to her spine. It was all around. By June, she had passed. You know, and I was home taking care of her. It was, you know, it was a lot. I have to give a big shout out to Jim Meredith, who was the principal at the time, who was just amazing for whatever I needed to do, was just beyond supportive. But yeah, like that. I mean, that was a blow. I was I was really close to my mom. My dad died when I was young, so she was my buddy. You know what I mean? She was mom and dad growing up, and we had some great memories.
Right. I can only imagine the strength it takes to be, you know, going through this during this period, and then having to be in school every day. And you weren't vocal about it, right? Were you kind of closed off about it?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, it was.
So how was, like, what kind of, like, I can only imagine the kind of strength that it took to be like that. So, like, what were some of the, like, the feelings of just holding that in? Did you feel like you wanted to tell people, or?
I think I did. I wasn't not one to say maybe I wasn't totally sure yet, but I don't think I wanted to verbalize that idea. I didn't want to think of that. I just kept thinking, you know, perhaps it'll get better, and then when when she decided to end the treatment, even that, I still think I look back on that, and it's easy to, like, you know, redo it, but I think I probably could have handled that better. I think I was quiet with it. I think I deflected a lot of it. It was the end of the year. It's like, oh, it's easier to handle some other stuff than deal with that, and that probably wasn't
Keep yourself busy.
the best. Yeah, like there is something to be said maybe about keeping yourself busy, but also being present in the moment, not ignoring that.
Yeah, exactly. You know, moments and feelings are fleeting, you know, and you never know when it could be your last moment. I want to ask, so what are some things, the most important things your mom has instilled in you?
I think, like, the attitude for how you approach things. My mom, for someone who didn't have the easiest life, was not a bitter person. And I think I made a comment before about not being bitter, but I would think, you know, that is definitely a piece. Even in her sickness, like, there was pain, but there wasn't bitterness or anger, I would say. So I think that way of approaching that, and maybe I've, you know, in some sense have adopted that with my own piece. You know, I can't be bitter about what happened. I mean, it's a reminder for me for kind of how I have to live life. You know, there's sometimes at times there's things I, you know, can't do, or things I have to do in a modified way. But I definitely think that, you know, that was probably the biggest.
What's your favorite thing about your mom? What were the 3 things, your favorite things about your mother?
She wasn't a great cook, but she made a couple of things well that I try, is probably that. Like I know it seems like a basic thing, like a meatloaf. I can't have a meatloaf. That's a
pretty good way to live life, though. Right. You know, be good at a few things. And,
correct.
You know,
make a couple of things well like that. You know, like the second one's going to be a hard one to describe. I was young. I was in grade school. My dad died. You know, she had to go get to work. But I don't think I ever knew if there was any type of, like, struggle or difficulty. My brothers and sister would clearly say I was spoiled being the youngest kid, so they may argue that. But, like, I don't think there was anything I ever, like, wanted for.
Right.
And, you know, one of the things I would say is that throughout my whole life, like, I knew she loved me unconditionally. I knew she supported me. You know, she loved the fact that I was a teacher. And I used to always say, because she would say sometimes, oh, do you think you'll go into administration? And I would say, like, never. Like, no, I like being in the classroom. I don't want to be in an office all day, all that. And when I was going for the assistant principal job, she's like, you said that's not what you wanted. I said, I'm just going to at least, let me try it a year.
Give it a shot.
And so she was fine. And then when she was sick at the end, when I was going to apply for principal, she's like, you said that's not what you wanted to do. I said, but I like this other job. Maybe I'll just give this a try also. And I think now, like 8 years later, but you know, so I think, you know, some of those attitudes. I mean, I could just think of, like, memories galore that I had with her. It
sounds like she was strong.
Yeah,
and I think you definitely took that head on, especially with how you're living life now. You mentioned that you never wanted to be in administration, but you wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
So what made you want to become a teacher?
It's weird. It's one of those things. Well, it's funny. I think my 8th grade yearbook, I was looking at it recently. I found it, and talk about what your occupation was going to be. I had funeral director, so which seems like it couldn't be like maybe more opposite.
It's very
the
specific.
current job. That is. I wonder what was going on in my head in
dark childhood.
in winter of 1993.
Yeah.
But there was probably a point. There was a priest when I was a student. I worked at the grade school rectory, and they needed a CCD teacher, and he somehow roped me into doing that, and I kind of liked it. And that was obviously with younger kids. And by some point, junior year, I was thinking I wanted to maybe teach. I had Mr. Ulmer, and I was thinking I think I want to maybe teach history. I had Mr. Deal sophomore year.
Mr. Deal.
Deal's great.
He's a legend.
And I love those classes.
I remember coming into class, and he always had like all the notes written on the board.
The wall of
every
notes,
morning.
absolutely.
Oh man,
I give him credit.
I was like, how the hell? Like
the handwritten test. Like he was nuts.
I always wish he missed a day. Notes. Nope, never.
Nope. Yeah. So I was thinking I wanted to do that, and then junior year I had Miss Leone for English, and I just really got into it. And at that point I said, you know what, I think that's what I want to do, and I wound up going to school for it, and in the end I did.
Right. So what do you, as you got into teaching?
Yeah.
What have you found to be some of the things you love most about it?
The relationships. One, the adults that I work with are great, but the students. It's something that the longer I've been at Ryan, the more it's been a thing. I mean, I've been at Ryan. This is my 22nd year.
Wow.
Like I said, teacher, then assistant principal for 2 years, and now principal for 8. The seeing families go through is so cool. Like, and then when you go to we just had a recent like a senior night. Say there was for the football team, and this family. They've had every one of their kids come through, and I think it was their 9th just came through. Wow. And then all of the siblings are there that you've had. You get to know the families. The relationship aspect.
The generations
with the
going down. I never really thought of it.
Is
that
amazing.
Way.
Going out and again, it's not all just seeing them out. Like again, say the reunion where you run into kids, but then to hear how they're doing, and it's like being right here with you. I'm saying this part where you have someone, it's not just some kid that leaves you at 18 that graduates. Like I hope most of us do care. We want to see you do well. And, ultimately we love to hear about that. So to go to the reunions, to be at the shore and hear that, or really to be anywhere and run into somebody, to have that. My sister sometimes gets some of my former students, who are doing like different parts of their training in the hospital. My, cousin's a doctor down at Temple, and he'll get the ones and I'll say they went to Ryan, and they're like, he says, do you know Joe McFadden? They're like, oh, we know Mr. McFadden. And he's like, oh, that's weird. The Mr. So just always that part I think is great. And that I think ultimately, I always tell our new teachers when they're coming in that like the first thing, don't focus on like yelling about sitting in the rows or classroom management or all that stuff. That stuff will come in time. It's about the relationships you have with the kids. If the kids know that you care about them, if the kids know that they're safe, they're not going to be, it's not a power trip or any of that, they'll work for you in class. They're not going to mess around.
I think it's the number one thing too, and I know, and that's the one thing. That's why I wanted to have you on too, is that you built such a great relationships with myself, with my friends, with people, with the students, and like we just respect you. Like I would go if I ever went in your classroom or you were a sub, like I would never disrespect you just because we were like. Not saying like cool, but we were like, I respected you. So like, I'm not, you know what I mean? Like, and I feel like a lot of students felt that way about you, which is, I never really specifically remember a moment where you like had to really yell or raise your voice in any type of way.
And I appreciate it. I mean, look, there are times it's even in my job now, I'm going to have issues.
You're going to have kids.
It happens. And a lot of that came from, Kathy Zamborski, Ms. Zamborski, great teacher, was my department chair, and really built upon, like, tried to instill that in me, that relational aspect. And I saw that maybe wasn't as great with it originally, and it's something you still work on, but the kids are in the room, and in some sense they're stuck in the room. You try to make it a place that they're going to enjoy, enjoy learning, and without going down that like rabbit hole, especially even like say compared to your generation, their attention spans are shorter now. I mean, there's a lot of issues, so you have to do a lot to try to maintain that.
I'll say this. I remember when I was in school, I had a Juke and like the Razor. Like those were our phones. Now it's like kids got iPhones. Like I even feel old saying that, but You know, it's just like I can only imagine.
iPhones, watches, AirPods, Chromebook in front of them. They got everything to kind of like distract them.
So we're curious, where did you go to school to become a teacher? Where did you get your degree?
Well, I was a Ryan grad, so I did go to Archbishop
so I went to Ryan
Ryan
for high school,
and then I wound up at Holy Family.
Oh.
I was, I did not venture far. I was a close guy. I mean, St. Martha's, Archbishop Ryan, Holy Family. I ventured into Morel. But I got to say, for me, especially at that time, I have nothing but great things to say about Holy Family. I was not. I was quiet. I was a quieter kid. I would not have done well at say my Penn State. My niece is at Penn State.
Like a Penn State mean.
That's where she is right now. It is, that would be that'd be way too large for me now. That was way too large for me then. Holy Family had some smaller classes. I had some great professors, some great experiences. I still talk to some kids we went through the program with, teaching. So, that was great. That was where I did my undergrad. I then went back to Arcadia number of years later, for a master's in English, and then St. Joe's for my educational administration.
So you don't ever regret not leaving the Northeast? Or were you ever wanted to?
No, when I was applying for the job with the Archdiocese and hoping to get a job at Ryan, I had also just applied for a job at a private boarding school out by Malvern.
Oh, wow.
And I was offered the job at Ryan, and right after that I was offered the job at the boarding school, and I turned it down because I said I had the job at Ryan. You wonder what difference there would have been, in the life. I mean, it wasn't like exactly Hogwarts, but like, the school was pretty.
Yeah, I mean, and
I like it. I grew up at Mcfadden Academy, right at the corner there. I say that I live in Tarsdale now. Like I'm a product of the Northeast, and I think in the best way. I think we try to serve the North.
Absolutely, and that's
the good kids, the good families. I was, raised. I was son of a police officer. My mom or my dad was alive. My mom, was a housewife, raised us, and then worked blue collar. And I think it's a great thing to serve our blue collar family.
And you have a certain responsibility, especially growing up in the Northeast. Like, you are the principal now of Ryan, which is one of the main schools in the Northeast. So it's like you hold a very special responsibility that all the students who come out of school are really through you, and and it shows through people that you've taught doing great things outside of school. And because of the relationships we build with our teachers, in high school, the curriculum was obviously very important, but I think one of the things that I remember most is just the relationships I built with certain teachers, the sports, everything that the school provides us with social is the most important thing, in my opinion. Right. And that comes through you and the rest of the staff and faculty.
Right, there's a great staff, and that's the part you're talking about, those things you truly remember. Not to harken back to the COVID, but that was the stuff that was gone.
Hard,
and like picture. I mean, I say this as a principal. I mean, probably the things kids dislike the most about school is class, or the 45 minutes of class. It's everything else that's great, whether it's the hallway, the cafeteria, dances, all those events, going to games, and that stuff. That was what got stripped away.
Yeah, and and you're really becoming your own person. It's the beginning of becoming your own person. And I always mentioned it before in previous podcasts. Like, you're kind of thrown into an environment, right, where you grow up in grade school, you grew up in high school, and you're put in this environment, whereas you go into college and so on, you're kind of pushed out into the real world. But I think it's super important in those years where you truly begin to develop who you are, find your crowd, essentially in this quote unquote bubble, because it's where you are, it's where you're located, right? So for you, what was your experience like in high school and grade school, and how did you think it molded you into wanting to become a teacher and becoming the Mr. Mcfadden, so called Mr. Mcfadden that we know and love today?
Gotcha. I think you could say Joe at this point.
Other than, call you Joe, but it's just a respect thing,
I mean, I had a great time in grade school. Good neighborhood, good group of friends. I mean, I'm not trying to make it sound like like the Stranger Things times, but I went to grade school at the time, where we could leave during lunch, and we could ride our bikes, and we could go home and have lunch, and you could hang out and then come back. It was just a very different time. So I mean, we did a lot of that, had a great time. High school, I mean, I need to keep my job. I mean, I went to Ryan. I grew up in the Northeast. We'll just there are no cell phones. There's very few photos. There was nothing of that, so we can. Right. I had some great times.
Do you have anything in particular that you remember that really sticks out to you
from high school?
Yeah. like
Yes.
growing up? Anything
Yes.
anything you like to share on the pod, the like Loft exclusive for all the students watching? No.
No, I think we're good. I think I got to keep that. It was,
I had to ask, right, guys? I had to ask.
yeah. All I'll say is this: there was I was at the there was a quizzo the other night for the wrestling team, and I had a horrible flashback to a first time memory of something because in the basket of cheer was Mad Dog.
Oh man.
I said, who is actually going to put a ticket in there? Like who in their right mind wants that?
Yeah.
So that might be the the one piece. I mean, when I was a student at when I was a student at Ryan, I loved it. Like I got to know a number of the teachers there. Like I was involved in activities, but I worked student maintenance.
Okay.
When they had a full student crew that cleaned the building. So like, I mean, you just really got to talk to the teachers. They were in their classrooms after school. I kind of got to see them, and I'm like, these are decent people that I like. I had some great teachers at the school, and I thought maybe I don't necessarily thought I would be back there teaching, and I certainly never when I was in there thought at any point that I would be the principal of the school.
I was gonna ask, like, did you ever envision that, and if you didn't, what did you want to do growing up besides funeral director?
When I was teaching, I mean it. I love it. And I mean, there are so many great teachers that they spend their careers teaching in the classroom, and that's where they are. And it is an amazing thing. I kind of feel like I stumbled into the assistant principal role in some way. I mean, I applied. I'm not it wasn't something that I was certainly gung-ho for. But you try to, in some small way, to bring the kind of person you are to the classroom.
Right.
As principal, like trying to set the tone for the culture in the building, and if you can bring that there, and I'm blessed, I still get to teach one class, so
that's awesome.
I think that is great. But in how maybe you're interacting with your teachers and how you're interacting with kids, families, staff, and all that, you still try to bring that same approach.
Yeah, it is like I said, it is a huge responsibility because you are the bridge between teenage years and the adulthood. So you're really teaching these kids sort of how to grow up in a way. I mean, you're responsible for that. So outside of school, outside of work, what do you do to keep yourself mentally just like stable? And we mentioned working out, we mentioned all that stuff, but what do you do? Anything mentally you do for yourself that people may not know?
I should probably nothing that people don't know. Like I should probably give the great answer and say read. It's one of the things I actually wish I could read more for myself. I teach an English class, and it's an AP English class, so I'm sometimes trying to find newer books, and they're more fiction, so I'm not always getting to necessarily read something for me. I do enjoy some downtime, as simple as binging a show, but my place of all places is the shore. I just absolutely love being there. I think even the place that place that I bought up here in Tarsdale is like is on the river, so that like nice. I'm probably like 100 feet from the river. So even just having that is being close.
So you have
to
a place in Wildwood, or
no? I rent. We rent each year.
So you rent in Wildwood though, right?
Not Wildwood. I go down for a little bit, but I have to avoid Wildwood. I love Wildwood. Wildwood is where my heart is. It's where I go with my family. Yeah. But being from Archbishop Ryan and being the principal there, like I can't sit on nobody needs to see their principal without a shirt on. Like it's just not a sight. I don't think anyone should have.
Right.
So I've done Sea Isle, I've done Ocean City.
Okay.
I'll kind of
I love Sea Isle.
Sea Isle's great. We used to do Sea Isle, but we haven't been there the last few years. But they have some great places. That's great.
So what do you love most about the shore?
Again, not to get up in the morning and so from an Ocean City, to go out on the boardwalk in the morning and go for a I should say jog, a light jog. Yeah. I love heading down to the beach, music, sitting down there. It doesn't matter that I'm 43. I love a good day when the waves are nice and going out and still riding waves. Awesome. I just find it, I can lose myself, out there and just sitting on there having a drink.
Awesome.
Just
that's great.
Absolutely enjoying it, and even coming back having good dinner, sitting out on the deck at night. I don't know, I just find that I could do that, and I love doing it on the weekends.
You seem like you find the simple things in life are what you enjoy, which is great, especially with having gone through a heart attack and having losing your mother. It's nice to just know that you are in a place where the simple things do satisfy you. And do you ever think back about your mother? Like, is there anything you kind of remember specifically, or thoughts you remember of her that kind of bring you peace?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know to say it's funny. It's one of those things I'd reflected on, like, she's passed. It was 2015, so it's about to be 8 years.
Yeah.
I think how it's weird. I've noted sometimes how she's appeared in dreams. It felt like for a number of years she didn't speak in them. It was bizarre, and only recently has. So I think, as I've heard things more with her voice, I had to find some pictures for something for a family event, and wound up like, it was supposed to be a 10-minute job, turned into hours. Just, I think, like, looking back, there were pictures of us. We were down the shore. I can remember when I was little down the shore, she would, again, she had to take that role. I was little. She would take me up on the boardwalk and walk me around, take me on the rides. And I can always remember, like, us spending our night, like, when it was done, it was at this one place we would get something to eat again. It was almost like a second dinner. But like, there's just all these, like, little moments that I can just remember having with her, with family, all the times down the shore. That was, maybe that instilled my love. That was, nothing made her happier than going down the shore. Going to the panoramic, she absolutely loved it there. And it was there that kind of got to meet the Dever, the whole, where that whole piece.
They brought me for a few trips. I got to meet Vince. And
Vince was down there. Yeah, I mean, that was started. I think that was for us started like 1990, 1991. Wow. So that was a long time, going there. And it was funny looking back at a lot of the pictures, how many of our, memories and moments, sort of were, were built upon that. But I could just think, it's hard to pinpoint like a very specific. I just, it's almost like a whole view of just like love and happiness.
Yeah,
I see.
it's
it was,
a feeling.
There was never really a fight. I mean, there were things. It was nice in a way. Like, we got along when I was a teenager. I was home for college. And I mean this in the best way. Like, it wasn't a problem. Like, if I was going out, I was going out. Like, as long, I came in, like, she always was on the sofa until I came in. That kind of thing.
Right.
But, we got along great. And then, I guess you probably experiencing it, like, when you kind of hit your, late 20s and you go into your 30s, like, the relationship with your parents, like, it becomes like a friendship relationship in a way. Like, they're still your parents and that, but there's just something different about it.
Right.
And again, I wish I had it longer, but I'm glad that I had what I had.
Yeah, you know it's funny. I do phone calls when we get new volunteers for the Grace Project, and I had a volunteer call today, and her name was Judy. She lived in California. She actually filled out a volunteer form for the wrong Grace Project, but whatever. So we had a long conversation, and she was kind of rambling a little bit, but talking about like being older and like what you're gonna learn from your parents, and I kind of just sat and took it in a little bit. Like, I wasn't like Kev the volunteer coordinator. I was kind of like listening to someone who's been through it and who's lived. And then one thing she said was, you realize as you get older, your parents were more and more right about certain the things that they try to instill in you. In the beginning, when you're younger, you get angry, but when you get older, you start to understand more what they're saying. And I think that's kind of the phase I'm in right now, where I'm starting to understand what my parents are trying to instill in me, or at least tell me, before you just get all angry. Like, I don't want to listen to you. Like, you don't want to, like, you don't understand, Mom, or whatever. But I'm more and more starting to understand that, they're right about certain things. And, and your family and your parents start to get older. They start to go through things, health-wise. I know my mom's had surgery, so it's like life kind of hits you, and you kind of think about like, oh, wow, like it could be gone in an instant, and you need to cherish the time you do have and understand what they're saying and respect a little bit more what they're saying. Because when you're younger at top, you're gonna get you and your parents are gonna go at it, But so do you think now, being 43, when you're speaking to your family, whether it's like nieces, nephews, etc., like, are you trying to instill in them anything that your mom has taught you, your dad's taught you when you're growing up? Like, there are things you're trying to instill in them?
Yeah, I think like my older brother Vince is good at that, because he's was obviously around them the longest and has that but they're ones that thank God, my nieces and nephews all had time around her up until 2015. And as a family, we've always been very close. My one brother Vince lives up in Quakertown. Like, there's so many memories that we are up there. There are times that we're up there all the time just for I was just up there for like a quizzo that we were together for and going away. So there's a lot of time spent there. So for the nieces and nephews, my mom, and even to an extent my grandmom, who outlived my mom by a year. After my mom passed, I had to take care of my grandmom for a year. And she was 97, a larger than life influence for all of us. Remembering her isn't just necessarily like things that we're telling them, because they just have memories of spending time with them, which is good.
Yeah. How much? So are you emphasizing more the little things in the moments? Are you focusing on being more present now, since just with your family in general?
Yes. I mean, I have been, but it's something that I'm conscious of. Like my nieces and nephews. I mean, I love my nieces and nephews. And they're varying ages. My one is my one nephew just turned 30. Vincent turned 30. Who I mean, I remember he was in 8th grade when I was born, and now we're taking him away for his 30th birthday. And like these things, like, and I have a niece that's, nieces that are at Commonwealth, and I have niece in, going to be a senior. She's a senior at Nazareth, and she's going to be going to Duquesne for a 6-year program for like pharmacology. But like,
it's great.
She was over our house all the time growing up. My mom took care of her. That was the one I was babysitting, and it's like, oh my God, like, you're going to be at Duquesne. Like, in some sense it's sad I'm not going to see you.
Yeah.
You want to have you want to be present with them, because at some point they're going to get older. They're going to go, they're going to move away.
You're getting them ready for that moment.
Yeah. And you want to make sure that at least there's some good, hopefully some good times, some good memories, and that you've been, a good influence with them. Like my niece, Kelly, I laugh. She'll FaceTime. She doesn't call. She's up at Penn State. I think it's either like, she needs needs me to read a paper, or needs my Hulu password or something. But like, sometimes, and then she'll talk after it. It's just really, it's just, I really appreciate that. And I, awesome. Appreciate the time you see with them.
That's awesome. For all the Ryan students watching, what are some things that they've instilled in you that you would have never thought you would have learned from, being a teacher, being a principal? Like, what are some things that your students have taught you?
I would definitely say, I thought I was patient. They in some weird way make me far more patient. They're definitely, I guess, in a weird way, some of the stuff they do, they somehow make me more tolerant. I don't know. I realize that I have to be. There's something just so genuine about them. Like, today they were doing a thing at lunch. They were playing Quizzo, and it seems minor, and they're just like, the way they just have you sit down with them, like they have their principal sit down with them and partake on the team. Like there's just something. They remind me that, like, you hear horror stories about like how, teens are lost and civilization is gone, and the next generation is just, they're horrible people that can't interact, and all they do is stare on their phones, and they do nothing, and they don't know. But that's not true. They do. They certainly look at their phones. Right. They might be a little struggle with certain types of communication, but they're good people, and it's on us to have to like try to teach them. If we value those skills, we can't just bemoan it. We have to teach it. And I think, maybe that's something that they remind me, that like, we're hopeful for them. Like there's a genuine goodness to them.
Yeah. I remember being that age, being 16 and being at Ryan, and like, you're becoming, I guess for students who are watching, like, you're becoming your own person at this stage in your life, and you're finding things that you enjoy and that you don't enjoy, and your teachers are there to guide you. They're there to help you. And one thing I would say to students is to be patient and to just follow your gut too. I think a lot of times students try to, or people and kids in general, I know I was almost guilty of it. You fall into the wrong crowd sometimes. Yeah. Because of peer pressure or trying to fit in. Sometimes it's not, you don't have to fit in all the time. I think it's super important that if you do stand out, to own it. And, because what that does is it brings the right people around you. I think being 26 now and going through this journey of, my own journey of, with DJing and the podcast and just kind of trying to be somebody. I mentioned in my own episode, I think it's just super important that when you are that young and you are starting to find a little bit of what you're interested in or what you care about, it's going to change regardless. Your ideas, your mindset's going to change. But I think it's super important at that age to really hone it and find your people. You don't need 30 friends. You don't need an entire friend group. But as long as you find the right 10 people or even less, it's super important. That's just something I would tell students, just to remember that, and you have people like Joe and, great teachers like, Panapresso, you have people like that who truly will listen to you and will talk with you and guide you.
It's an amazing thing to watch a kid from, say, maybe freshman year who may, there's some struggles or maybe some difficulties with the kid or some issues, and really trying to work with that kid, and move them through. And we have them all the time. And then, I always tell them that I think the best part of my job, the coolest part, is I get to hand them their diploma, that I get to be the person, that does that piece. I take that seriously. But the goal is hopefully that by the time that, when they come graduate, look, some kids have the school game down. They don't need, and I mean that, they don't need us. And I in some sense, they know exactly what they're doing, but there are other kids that come through that need help. It's our job, necessarily to work with them. And find different ways to support them, and provide different experiences for them, and maybe teach them those lessons, not to, necessarily just put yourself in one box, to be open to these experiences. And
I also want to stress too, to those kids who may need a little bit more help, that they aren't kids that are worth giving up on. Right. I remember, there are kids that need a little bit more help, but that doesn't mean that those kids are not capable of being something way bigger than themselves. You see it all the time. Obviously, you have great grades, you're great school, whatever. That's great. I love that for you. But I know I was never one of those kids. I was never one of those kids, who in college, I think I had a 3.0 GPA, but I didn't really apply myself in college. School wasn't for me, but I felt like I had potential in other ways. And I'm just now starting to see that. And being that age in high school, and if you are a kid who's struggling, if you're in, third track or whatever track, it doesn't matter. Your potential, you are so young, your potential is limitless. Correct. And I'll put it in sports terms for you guys. So think of Jalen Hurts, right? Went to Alabama. And then, got started over in the championship game, then went to Oklahoma, and then got drafted in the second round, and they counted him out. And now he's the youngest quarterback to ever play in the Super Bowl at 24 years old. And the point is constantly betting on yourself and constantly, putting yourself in that mindset where listen, I know it's going to be a journey, but I know what I'm capable of. You know what I mean? So don't give up on yourselves. Just like, Joe and the rest of the faculty don't give up on you. You shouldn't give up on yourself just because you may not, you may not be, great in certain aspects, whether it's school, but as life begins to go on, you become 20, 21, 22, and you start to really find your path and your journey. You may excel in other places. It doesn't have to be school. So, just if you're a student watching this, just remember that just because you may not be the best at school doesn't mean you can't excel anywhere else.
At the school, we have to provide those experiences for kids, because I can even think of kids that came to us they're Newman scholars, they're brilliant and all that, but then, we still want to. The goal was to round them out. They come to you as a very bright 8th grader. Yeah. But now your job is to try to, provide them some of these experiences, let them try to discover what it is that they're interested in. Maybe where is their path going to take them.
Yeah. And you have certain students that are really good at school who may not be able to speak in front of a class, where you have a student who can speak in front of a class but not be good at school. So just find your strength and build on it and double down on it. Is there anything?
I was going to say, my brother brother Mike used to joke, I was very quiet. And he would I can't believe you're going to be going to school for a teacher. You're quiet. You go to a thing. And I suddenly, I did have to kind of break myself out of that. I was okay in a conversation, but maybe instigating one was not necessarily the easiest.
I mean, you went from being afraid to go to school to running a school. So it always shows what time can do for you. And I always say too that, your life can change so much in 6 months, whether good, bad, or in between. So it's always just taking things as they come to you, being present and building off of your strengths and doubling down on it. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the viewers or the students watching?
I will tell you, I think I'm good, but I think like, even here, I know you reflected recently on your own, like, high school experience. What would, if you were addressing the kids, like, if you could give them like, boil it down to one or two pieces, what would you think for them?
I think being in school, I never really felt like I fit in, to be honest with you. I was a student council and basketball team and all that stuff, but I still never felt like I fit in because I felt like I didn't really find who I was yet. I'm still figuring it out. Mm-hmm. My advice is to just take every opportunity that comes at you and take it. You never know you never really know what can happen, when you take a chance, when you take an opportunity. And also don't get down on yourself. Don't get too high, don't get too low. You're so young. Like, there's so much potential. You're 16, 17, 18 years old, and your life can change drastically. And you have all the power in the world to do that. Just because you are failing a class or you get one bad test grade, that doesn't mean it's the end of the world for you. I remember I used to think that. I remember I'll get like a 60 on a test and I'm like, oh shit, like,
it's all over.
My life's done, you know what I mean? But like I said, you kind of realize, like, the grand scheme of things, like, you have so much going for you in your life, and you don't know, your mindset can change so much. Like I kind of mentioned before, your ideas are going to change. What you want to do in your life is going to change. So as long as you just attack what you have that's in front of you and every opportunity that's in front of you, I mean, that's going to build you for the next 10 years, your next 20, 30, the rest of your life, So it's just important to take the opportunities you have when they're there, and also be a good person. That's the number one thing too. Being a DJ in the industry and meeting all the people in the industry, like, I've learned that, and being with the Grace Project, you just learn, like, be a good person. Like, like, if you're in school and you see a kid, sitting by himself at lunch, sit with them. You see someone getting bullied, stand up for them. Just because you learn that when you get out of school, those things don't matter in the sense of, like, the cliques, the crowds. Your life's going to change so much. Yeah. But when you're in school and you're in those moments and you're in those times, be a good person, because that person that you sat with in school, when you are looking for a job and he's the number one in his class and he has actually some say in a company, he can get you in the job. It's like, I'm just trying to think grand scale, but when it comes down to it, just be a good person. And people are looking for a leader. I've learned that too. People are looking for a leader. They're looking for someone to look up to. And if you can be that person, you're going to have people say things about you. You're going to have people come at you, but you're also going to have a lot of people who support you, and the right people support you. And just, be a leader. I think it's a number one thing too, is that being a leader is huge.
Yeah. Like you're saying, the way you treat people, like I was saying with being a teacher, it's relational, I think so much of what we do, and, you think of so many things, how, if everyone focused on the relationship aspect and that, and building that. Yeah. Network,
and relationships. I mean, for example, me and my former teacher are on a podcast together, like 10 years later. It's just like, 8 years later, it's just like, it's crazy how things kind of work out, know? So, Joe, I want to thank you for coming on.
This was great. Thank you,
such a good time.
I appreciate it. Such
a good time.
Right.
And I have to ask, are you on social media?
Yes.
All right. Do you want me to put it link in the bio or anything, or link in the description?
I mean, I'm 43, so I'm on Facebook. I have like 7 Instagram posts.
Yes. All right. Go add Mr. Mcfadden as a friend on Facebook. No, but seriously, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for opening up. And to all the students watching, be a good person, and also don't sell yourself short. You don't know how far you can go. Your potential is limitless. You guys are so young, and to all the teachers watching, you're young too. But seriously, thank you guys so much. I'm Kevin Nichols. That's Mr. Mcfadden. You've been watching The Loft. Peace, guys.